Melvin Edward Alton Murphy was born in Palermo, California, 1915. He began playing his father's cornet, and Daddy bought him a new trombone at age 12. He was a rough-looking kid and a husky guy, and I'm sure the name Melvin did not go over very well with his classmates. So at some point he got the nickname Turk, and it stuck with him for the rest of his life. He graduated from high school, joined a traveling dance band. He had discovered the New Orleans style on his daddy's records at home, and he was anxious to do it, just exactly like Lou's story. He met Lou in 1938 and became a fixture in the Yerba Buena Jazz Band immediately. While I was researching these stories, I heard that Lou Waters was a real taskmaster, and when his band was a little slow coming back from a break, or maybe a little late to the gig or something, he would call the terrible blues in, what's 7 flats? I don't even know what 7 flats is, but it's a lot of flats, and his boys would have to play it. So that was their punishment. Well, as I said, Turk Murphy left the Yerba Buena Jazz Band in 1949. He got a gig at the Italian Village in San Francisco's North Beach for 3 years, and then he went on the road. He went to New York. Spent 3 years there. He's credited with coining the term traditional jazz, because what happened in New York was that he found out that Dixieland musicians weren't making as good money as some of the other guys that were making on the street back there. And the owner of the place told him that Dixieland musicians weren't worth that much money. He says, "We don't play Dixieland, we play traditional jazz." So he got his raise, I think, that way. But he, like almost every musician, wants to have their own place to play and call the shots. So he bought a nightclub down in the depths of San Francisco. It was on the corner of Broadway, which is a nice street, and Front Street. Now, can you imagine what Front Street looks like in San Francisco, especially in the 60s, 50s? I've been there. It's about a block off the Embarcadero. We used to go up there before he bought it and dance to another band that was there. And all through the time I was there, I was wondering whether my car was going to be there on the street when I went out to get it. It was that kind of a place, but it was always there. He named the club Earthquake Magoons. If you're...
Arnie, I was there then too, and that place was off limits to sailors.
Gee, I wonder why.
That makes sense, because they're sailors.
Earthquake Magoons, if you're a fan of Little Abner and Al Cap, he was a cartoon character in Little Abner. But Turk liked the word Earthquake Magoons. And we're going to play a tune now that Turk wrote. While they were at the Dawn Club in 46 and so, there was an article in the San Francisco Chronicle about the success of this young band downtown San Francisco on Annie Street. And the columnist who wrote the article called them the minstrels of Annie Street. And Turk thought that was such a great phrase that he wrote a tune, and here it is, called The Minstrels of Annie Street. Okay, well, the place down on Front Street was okay, but it wasn't the best place, and so he bought Turk bought a place on Clay Street, also in downtown San Francisco, called the William Tell Hotel. Now, this was a defunct hotel that dated from way back in the 20s, and it was not a hotel anymore. It's just a big empty building. But the reason Turk liked it is because the lobby was wonderful. It was a big round building, the lobby was, and on the second story there was also a balcony that was round like that, and he pictured people sitting up there and eating and drinking and down on the floor with the band, and it worked out wonderfully. I was fortunate enough to attend a thing there one time where he had as a guest band the Firehouse Five from Los Angeles. And they were alternating. One of the best nights of my life. Never forget it. Anyway, Turk had 6 musicians in his band, the usual 3-horn front line, plus piano, banjo, and tuba. He rarely used drums in the band. All were great soloists as well as ensemble players. he featured a clarinet player named Bob Helm, who stuck with him up until the end of his life. They were a great combination. And Bob Helm did a wonderful job on this tune by Lil Hardin, Perdido Street Blues. When Turk was featured with the Yerba Buena Jazz Band, we always call it the YBJB, so if I refer to that, that's what that means. YBJB, Yerba Buena Jazz Band. There was a fellow in San Francisco who also played trombone and took great delight in copying everything Turk did, note for note. He'd play his solos exactly like Turk played them, and it really ticked off Turk. He said, that's not right. So he said, I'll fix that guy. So he wrote a tune, and he said, this guy will never be able to play this tune. First of all, it'll be in D flat, which is 5 flats, and just let him try. Well, Turk found that it took him 6 months to learn how to play his own tune. It's taken me 30 years. Gonna give it a shot today. It's called The Trombone Rag by Turk Murphy. Turk had a piano player named Wally Rose. Now, Wally Rose was a short guy, very unobtrusive, never spoke a word unless he was asked to. But he could knock out a Scotch oplin rag like nobody else in town. He was wonderful. He taught classical piano, but he played with Turk and did all kinds of ragtime stuff. He was considered one of the finest performers of authentic rag in his time. This isn't a rag, but it's a piano solo, and we'd like to present Marguerite Berg with our version of the West Texas Blues. Turk's next location for his Earthquake Magoons was an old building right on the waterfront, right next to Market Street, downtown. It was called Earthquake Magoons again, of course. The problem with the building was there was no parking anywhere around it. It was awful. And once again, you had to worry about where you stashed your car, in an alley somewhere or something. So that didn't really last very long. In 1979, you remember, those of you who have visited San Francisco, one of the big attractions there is Pier 39. And when that first opened up in 1979, Turk moved his latest version of Earthquake Magoons to the Pier 39. And the tourists there seem to love this next song. It's a King Oliver song that we like to feature the trumpet and clarinet sections of our band. It's called a Snake Rag. In the 1950s, there was a columnist for the San Francisco Chronicle, a lady named Annie McCool, who was a great Turk Murphy fan. She'd be in the front row every night, writing good stories about him in the Chronicle, and became a real good friend of Turk and the band. And then she contracted cancer, and Turk had a big heart for people like that, and he wrote a tune for her, and just before she died, he got a chance to play it for her. It's called Something for Annie. Let me explain why that title is there. Annie McCool was the kind of a woman who was always doing something for someone, and that was her reputation. And so when Turk wrote a tune, he called it Something for Annie. I always get choked up when I read that. Oh, his last Earthquake Magoons actually was called the New Orleans Room at the Fairmont Hotel at the top of Nob Hill. So Turk finally made it to the top of San Francisco. His health began to deteriorate in about 1986, and some friends of his thought that he couldn't go out of this world without a Carnegie Hall concert, so they arranged to have him play his band at Carnegie Hall in January of 1987, and it was certainly the high point of his long career. He died of bone cancer in 1987. The funeral was at Grace Cathedral. I don't know if you've ever seen this place in San Francisco. It's a beautiful, huge cathedral. The place was packed. I happened to be there. The white casket was up in front, the trombone on top. The service ended with, he had a longtime girl singer named Pat Yankee, and she sang Amazing Grace all by herself. And hers was the only dry eye in the house. It was amazing. Here's a tune that he always closed up his sets with, his theme song called Bay City.